I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli remains on a vacation. But Andrew Kuo, as most people suspect, doesn't take days off. Andrew Kuo, how are you, buddy? Happy Memorial Day weekend extended?
It's like I watched a Portland Trailblazers rock block of games and I'm so rested. Dude, I slept for 13 hours from Sunday to Monday.
That's really impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
Were you tuckered out from barbecuing?
I was tuckered out from all like the positive news I've been receiving from the universe and all these like fun times I've been having with my friends. It just like really took it out of me. No, I don't know. It was inexplicable. I went to sleep really early and I expected to wake up. You know, I get like 6 hours of sleep a night. That's enough for someone my age. But I went ahead and doubled that because I wanted it more.
You did a classic oversleep, didn't you?
I did. And subconsciously I knew I didn't have to like get on the school bus. So maybe I hit that snooze a little too long. Maybe I turned my snooze off. But it was incredible. I crushed it.
When you do the extra long sleep at home, it kind of seems to turn you into a sloth. You wake up groggy and you just want to go back to bed again. Like you kind of just miss a day.
I heated up some lo mein and stared at like my TV logo bouncing around. No show on. Yeah, I was not energized, man.
So back in the day, before COVID, you used to be able to take planes. And the planes would fly you to different areas of the globe, which, and this is crazy, use different times.
Crazy.
Insane shit, dude. I don't know how they came up with that. But, so when you go to Europe.
Going back in time, man.
You try to fly out late as possible. You want that 11:30 midnight flight out of New York. So that way you get there and you get out of the airport and through customs at like 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And that way you can go check into your Airbnb or your hotel or get to your friend's house, wherever you're staying. And like the day is started, but you always like crash for a little while. So there's always one day when you have to take this insane sleep there, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and when you go...
And those really work. You don't get groggy when it's because of jet lag.
Interesting.
To me, at least.
Yeah. It's hard to tell because if I'm in a place that's that far away, like the farthest I've been is Japan, and the excitement of being there kind of overrides the grogginess, but I don't feel normal at all for like 3 days. I mean, this is just classic jet lag stuff, right?
But I will say the other part of this foreign life to us, no pun intended, that does not exist anymore, was that when you flew to Europe, if you were out there really having a good time, Berghain it up, and frolicking in the first in La Marais,
buying leather gloves in Portugal,
that kind of stuff. You could also fly out there and just be on like late night time, and that was kind of the sickest.
It's kind of amazing when
because you just go out there and be like, all right, so now I just stay up until 5 a.m. all the time.
Yeah,
and that's my new schedule, and I sleep until, and you just would stay on New York time, just shift it to staying up all night overseas. Man, the world used to be nuts. Thank God we can stay home now in our apartments with one time zone.
Do certain flat earthers think that the time zone thing was like a knock to the conspiracy that the earth was round, and now that we can't fly, they're like, told you, everything's simulating, it's a flat earth? Because like we could almost see the curvature of the earth if you're high enough, but time zones really threw a wrench into their plans. I don't know. How's Kyrie Irving?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I feel like if you've embraced the flat earth lifestyle,
that big
someone
flat earth life,
and your friends have come up with explanations for this stuff. Like the lore of the flat earther clearly comes up with a reason why there's time zones.
I know. You can probably Google this. I could probably Google this.
It's a rich culture.
It's awesome.
Of orb denialism.
It's sort of like you put on your leprechaun uniform and you're like, Jason Tatum is an MVP candidate. And everyone's like, right, okay, this is the big leprechaun energy. We understand where you're coming from.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were wearing a different uniform before. I didn't recognize how great you are because now you're clad in green.
That's what you tune into Cookies for, the dispelling of the conspiracy theories. And thank you for everyone who has signed up to our Patreon feed.
Oh, yes. What lovely, generous folks. They are listening to this instantaneously, almost as the words leave our mouths are being sent to our dear, beloved patrons.
And
if you're not one of them, you
cool.
got to wait a few days. It's great,
yeah.
But it's not quite as fresh.
You don't have 4 days of those heater takes that you can use as ammunition to fight
slay
the
your
BMM. Yeah. The interns got into it yesterday. Woo! RJ Barrett or Jason Tatum? It's a tough call, man.
A lot of people are asking that.
The streets want to know.
Who is the taller defender, Frankie Smokes or Marcus Smart? A lot of people are asking. By the way, for our beloved patrons, there is going to be a long sleeve tee drop later this week, and you're going to have early access to make sure you get the size you need, and you don't have to size down, which is Quo's ultimate nightmare.
My nightmare. Size up. A lot of people ask why we don't provide size smalls for for people who look like me. And the reason is I think everyone should be sizing up still. Even years later after this was declared, I think you should be wearing, if you wear a medium, wear an XL. If you wear a large, wear a double XL.
Is it fair to say that you're a size cop? Or are you a size bully?
Am I a size enforcer? Listen, MSG is a place of worship, so you are offending me on a deep spiritual level.
Tom Sizemore over here.
There's a baseball player named Grady Sizemore, so I can't make that joke without going to the sin bin. But yeah, I think everything looks definitely nicer. All right, so the worst part of me, man, I've been going out into the world because staying at home has finally been too difficult. And that sounds like complaining. I'm just saying it gets depressing. So I've been trying to take a walk every day. Sometimes I miss some days. And I've been noticing a lot of people, young people, gathering, drinking on Saturdays and Sundays, blocking the street, no masks. They all kind of look the same. So the worst part of me has come up with a term for them. And I don't love this about myself, but this is the easiest way to describe them. Bonobros, bro. They all look like they have those yacht rock shorts, those kind of like fly knit fabric sneakers with white soles, Hawaiian shirts, and huff hats. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Are these the same people who would wear vineyard vines?
Mm-hmm. Allbirds and bonobo, obviously. Bonobos. And I thought this world was moving towards an ethical, sized-up Hoka universe. I was wrong as hell.
When these people are bonoboing it up on the street, are you threatened by their presence? Is it an aggressive presence due to the fact that we are in a pandemic? Is that what I'm getting from this? Or are they just the people who do this normally in the Lower East Side on nice afternoons, just doing their thing?
It's both, right? Like,
do you feel about them differently now, or is this the same hostility that you exhibit towards the species of Bonono Bros?
Again, the worst part of me. And I had to think about this and be like, well, I just don't like jerks. It's not necessarily their style, because a lot of these people are probably like LeBron James fans, and I'm cool with whoever, I don't know, whatever. And there's a sense of danger there. I know a little, but enough to stay away from people yelling loudly and talking loudly.
Yeah, I think your natural instincts are the same, COVID or no COVID. Mm-hmm. And the Lower East Side on a weekend, avoid these characters.
A little bit, right? And this is even in the supermarket, somebody on their headset talking loudly about a date or something. Now I'm just like, okay, this is how we get sick. It's not necessarily like touching stuff or surfaces or anything other than like breathing in someone's breath.
I think where you're going with this is kind of interesting because we've ascribed the COVID threat to people that we already don't really love. Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting, like, added hostility and justification that I think is probably citywide or global. Yeah. When people see a bunch of, let's call them yokels, in the Ozarks, in a lukewarm, urine-drenched pool, drinking brews during the coronavirus, they're like, look at these irresponsible swine. It is a pink slime fest. Look at this. They're disgusting. They would also dislike this site any other time, however, and probably mock them for doing the exact same thing. But now we have self-righteousness on our side, a great sword of smugness against the yokels in the pool.
You make a good point, because if I was in upstate among the trees at night and I saw a bunch of dudes in white face paint headbanging, I'd be like, my Knicks brethren, I love these people. No masks. We're all chill here. Yeah, totally. Like, it's like, maybe that's what I meant by the worst part of me. I'm like, oh, I know I'm doing a thing that sucks. And I don't know any of these people, but they do hang out. Definitely on Avenue A, they're out there.
Have you, right, so this is a kind of shaming, I'm not saying you're doing it, of other people. And we've seen this during this epidemic over and over and over, of people going to a place at the same time, seeing other people at the same place at the same time, and saying, I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Have you felt an added sense of guilt via leaving the house? That you aren't doing your job as a upstanding member of society?
Immediately.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, because I think we're seeing this, right?
Yeah, and I think when we were potting every day, I was struggling with that a lot. And it was all this stuff like survivor's remorse, guilt, kind of like hubris, it's like all these different emotions. And I remember I was rewatching a movie with the Adam Driver, and there was a scene where he was like a young guy. It was a Noah Baumbach movie, and he was just talking. He's like, I don't know. I just don't think I'm ever going to die. And I thought that was such like a cool idea. And that's what I mean by hubris. And that coincided with going out and knowing that it's kind of dangerous regardless of how you feel, of your age, or for your risk group. To be out there provides a risk to some degree. I do feel guilt, and we know the numbers, and we saw the New York Times Saturday cover, and that was too much, man. And I don't know how to do this right, but I feel guilt ordering food. I feel guilt getting groceries delivered if I did. I feel guilt all around. I feel guilt watching TV as people are like on ventilators.
Yeah, and this ties into privilege versus non-privilege, right? You have essential workers, people whose job requires that they act heroically and put themselves in harm's way. I'm talking about doctors and nurses and first responders. And then you have people who are unfortunate enough that their job requires them and their life requires them to have that job, who work in places where they get sick, in bodegas or delivery guys, etc. MTA workers. They didn't sign up for this shit.
No.
And I'm not going to sit here and say, you're a hero, you're helping. No, that's not fair. Mm-hmm. They got screwed.
Yeah.
And they need to get protected, and they need us to care about them. But instead of like pretending that they are heroic.
Yeah.
Like, they are brave, no doubt, but they are in a bad situation. Let's make it tangible. Like, someone delivers your food, tip him heavily.
Yeah.
Et
Yes.
cetera.
I think,
but again, this is not saying those people are not heroic in their own way. but just to be like, our heroes who work in the bodega. Like, no, man, this is their life.
Yeah.
They have to do this. They're not doing it by choice.
I think about this constantly. Like, how do we help people in need? How do politicians create policy that helps people? How do we help our like weakest link in society? And I always come back to like, give them money. Don't make them pay as much. Any way to give them more money. It's like, why don't we like give them that dignity that they're looking for? I'm like, yes, and money. Don't forget the money part.
Right. Yeah, I'm like our fake like applause for people who work in bodegas. Like, no. Like, support them. Like,
Buy
help
stuff,
them out.
tip
Buy
them.
stuff.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, when we see these people who work these jobs getting sick as part of what they are forced to do or what they choose to do to help society, either way, however you want to regard it, it's tragic. It's tragic. They're in, multi-generational homes. They have to take public transportation. It's tragic.
Yeah.
When someone who has other options, they can work from home, they can social distance. When these people get sick, it's a totally different thing now, right? Mm-hmm. There's part of it is tied to like, you violated the code. You did something to get yourself sick.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's wrong, but there's an element of like getting COVID is not something you can say, I was out there hanging out with my friends and I got COVID. Mm-hmm. You almost have to say, I don't know how I got it. I don't know what happened. I was at home all the time. I only went out to buy toothpaste. And here I am with COVID.
I am the safest person I've ever seen, yet I somehow got sick, right?
And to me, I understand that inclination because you go on Instagram, it's a photo of people not socially distancing, saying, social distancing.
Yeah.
Like people are creeping back out of hibernation and are like, social distancing. Like everyone no one wants to be shamed for coming back out into public because it's real. The threat's real. But it's created this odd dynamic of like hiding how you were really acting from the public.
And I think like doctors and therapists and psychiatrists know this to a T. It's like, well, how many days do you drink a week? I'm like, well, I have like 2 beers on a Saturday. Who doesn't? They're like, okay, you pound beers 5 nights a week. It's like, do you do drugs? It's like, well, sometimes I smoke weed. It's like, okay, you're a full-blown pothead. Now, how can I help you?
So it's, you want me to count off the amount of drinks I have? Oh, sure, absolutely. 2, 3. Okay, yeah, like 8. Okay, great. You have 200 drinks a week. Got it. 185. That's actually that's correct.
I have a sensible diet. It's like, okay, you eat raviolis on pizza at least once every day. Good. Check.
Okay, how many rigatoni calzones do you have a week? Okay, 7. 7. You eat 7 of those. You eat 1 every single day.
ZD samosa, check. But yeah, I mean, this is like my favorite idea that we keep on hammering, or my preferred idea, is that COVID brings out things that have already existed and accelerates them. And this way of thinking that you're talking about has always existed in a way, but gets accelerated when there's a pandemic, right? And the way we act is so interesting because we need to feel that righteousness sometimes and be like, I think you are doing the wrong thing. I think I am doing the right thing. And this is the layer of complication with bonobroing. Like, I believe everybody who's doing that thinks they're informed and correct. And I can't really speak to that. It's like, I've read the reports. What we're doing is safe. We're socially distancing. We're good.
And also, America, New York City, chose a different method of controlling this than we've seen in Asia and Europe. Mm-hmm. It's always been kind of up to people. They've said, don't, if you got to wear a mask if you can't social distance. Like that's out there. You got to do it. But there's a lot of interpretation, right? If I'm walking down the street and I'm passing people, am I not social distancing? I don't know. We just walk near each other. Am I supposed to wear a mask if I walk near this guy? Or does that mean I should wear a mask if I sit next to them on the subway? Like, there's so much room for individual opinion to come into this, and there always has been. So when you see people in the park and they're like, well, you're not supposed to be in the park, but there's no law.
Yeah, we don't want that smoke. We don't want that Hong Kong, Beijing smoke where it's kind of enforced with more vigor. And I don't think Americans do well with that because we're known as like revolutionaries, right? And we still have that ethos where it's just like, you can't tell me what to do. And I'm like, oh, that's a deeply American thing to think. And I like that about this country a lot. And it's really complicated when there's hazy science and hazy news where it's like, it's 6 feet. Actually, it's 12 feet, but 6 is good. And you go into the supermarket, and my pet peeve is it's 6 feet in a straight line, but people walk next to you outside of that line. And it's like, it should be 360 degrees of 6 feet, But it's hard to enforce because the architecture of these places weren't designed for this.
I do find it funny when people who are not supposed to get COVID get it and kind of have to reinforce this idea that it's so easy to get and you can get it from doing anything. Like, I barely, socialize at all. And then, like, everything else was just, maybe I got it off a Domino's pizza box.
Probably, bro.
Look, man, you don't have to tell us you got on Grindr, had a foursome in a cabin in the woods, and coughed in each other's faces as a kink. You can keep that to yourself. That's okay. But don't undersell it and make us think that you got it because your issue of the New Yorker came in, sat on the table for a couple days, you touched it, then touched a doorknob, then touched your eye. That's not how you got it, man. You got it from being around someone else who has it. And that's what I mean by the guilt, right? Where no one wants to say publicly, yeah, I went and hung out with my friends.
Yeah.
I rode around in a car with my friends.
Yeah.
I've been boning this person. And I guess they got it, and then they came over, and now I have it. No one wants to say that stuff.
Right. Yeah, because and I can understand that because the downside is death. And the upside is not getting sick. And maybe that's my survivor's remorse thing. It's like the remorse turns into indignation pretty quickly. It's like, well, I don't think Vietnam should be in. We shouldn't be in Vietnam to begin with. And I'm like, oh yeah, this human emotions kind of cascade or like fall like dominoes, right?
I think in this situation, I'd rather people say, look, I slipped up. Please be mindful and avoid slipping up too. I could have done a better job, instead of being mystified.
Yeah.
Say, I could have done a better job. I thought, light socializing would be okay. In truth, you just don't know who has this. People's status changes on the day. The same person you've been hanging out with off and on might just have it now.
Yeah.
And there's no way you would know. Like, be careful. Versus kind of fear-mongering about the ways that we can get it. Because now we know. Yeah. Now we know it's not easy to transfer from, like, surfaces.
Yeah.
It's from other people and being around them.
And the mental exercise you're talking about is something I think about quite a bit, and is the hardest fucking thing, man. So if I'm walking my dog in Central Park without a leash, and someone pops out of the bushes with a camera and says, put your damn dog on a leash, I am trying my hardest to be like, my bad, I did something wrong. Here, I'm going to put my dog on my leash. I know you don't like me. I accept that. I made a mistake. That to me is like, it's still difficult, but I try to do that. When someone like, you messed up, I'm like, I did. I'm sorry, I did not mean to do that. What's
confused me about this is both of their last names are Cooper, right?
Very confusing. Very confusing. And there was also, I know you're not an NFL fan.
Just because I kept seeing, like, the name Cooper, and I was like, wait, is she Cooper or is he Cooper? And we're talking about the incident with the woman who was walking her dog or playing with her dog in the Ramble in Central Park and
staring at rambles.
And a birdwatcher who was staring at rambles.
New York.
And is also a black man told her to leash the dog. She then went on a sort of bizarre, and this is recorded on video, attempt to get the cops to arrive and potentially order in a hit in some way on this guy who checked her for walking her dog. And that became a social media phenomenon over the last couple days and spiraled.
Yeah, she is fired from her job. She gave up the dog back to the adoption agency. She had the dog for 2 years and gave it back to the shelter. I don't know if she was forced to do that. And yeah, it was kind of a sad thing that happened and definitely worth a lot of anger. But to me, like, I just keep on thinking that, like, some stuff is so avoidable. We could have avoided so much of this, and some stuff is not avoidable, and arguments happen. And I've gotten into arguments at the bar about Kobe Bryant where I could have just said, like, he's awesome, but I was just like, well, I really need to get my point across. And that's what I mean by, like, the hardest thing to do is, like, when admit that you have done something wrong. And it could have been so easy if she was like, my bad.
Of course. And the fact that she chose to escalate the situation in a way that could have ended up with that guy being arrested or killed. And
which is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous scenario. Yeah.
And did it on tape and did it intentionally. And, there was no feeling that she was not aware exactly of what she was doing.
Yeah, everyone sprung into action.
It was calculated.
Yeah. All these mechanisms sprung into action. Like, he knew to be calm and to videotape calmly. She knew what to do here to serve her own purpose. And the internet
knew
how to
societally
talk about it.
To act on camera and increase her hysteria while talking with 911 so that they would respond in a certain way to this threat that she was describing. Like, as you said, the tumblers clinked into place.
Yeah. She recognized that mechanism and went straight for it. And then all the stuff happened afterwards, and we talked about it. And it's gross. I hate it. I hate every part of this. I hate where this comes from. I don't love the way it went down, man. And I kind of want to be the person be like, we're going through a pandemic, man. Can we give ourselves a break for a second? But like we always say, this was on the table already, and it's accelerating.
I personally am not going to shed tears for her losing her job or her dog, because what she did was vile and was intentional. And these are the consequences of you doing that, and especially doing it on tape. Like, you are incredibly stupid, just wildly stupid, but to expose exactly what you were attempting. But this has been discussed in a parallel with an incident in Minnesota where a man named George Floyd was murdered by cops. One was sitting atop of him with his knee on his neck, as the man said, "I can't breathe, I'm dying." Very reminiscent of Eric Garner in Staten Island. And witnesses said to the cop, "This guy is dying, stop doing this, you're going to kill him," like repeatedly. And the cop stood there and did it until he died. And it's led to protests. Last night, there was a protest, and then the cops responded in a militarized fashion, shooting tear gas. So these are two really interesting parallel stories that kind of discuss the Karen in our society, the use of and wielding of law enforcement as a weapon against black people, and then the actual potential ramifications of police encountering a black man. It's like a really nasty two stories running next to each other.
Yeah, and the death, I think, is the nastiest, obviously, because it's ultimately the harshest outcome. And that video really shook me, like the Eric Gardner video. Not only because we know he ends up dying, but did you catch that moment when he screams for his mother? That was crazy. It's like, to watch somebody at that level of despair. I was almost shocked when I think he says, "Mama, mama." I'm shocked that the police officer wasn't shook. I'm like, are you not a human being? This is like, it's gone beyond Like, I think people know, I hope people know, being like, I can't breathe is like a signal, being like, you're doing something. It's a clear indication of expressing distress. Like, I'm at a 10 level of distress here. But when he switches it to the mama thing, I'm like, these cops should, like, chill the fuck out, man. It was shocking.
What's striking about that video, for many reasons, is that it didn't happen in the basement of a precinct. It didn't happen in a back alley on a moonless night. It's cops with a knee to a man's neck, killing him in broad day, knowing they're being videotaped, while talking and interacting with people who are telling them to stop doing it.
Yeah.
It's what you said. It's a brazen disregard for human life. It's not even viewing the person who they were kneeling on as being a human, as being worthy of living. Am I saying they were intentionally trying to kill that man? No, probably not. But they certainly weren't trying not to kill him. They weren't sitting there trying to keep him alive.
Yeah.
He was there with his neck in his throat, and they just sit there, and he died in front of them. They didn't care about his life at all.
I mean, these two examples, I just feel like these were avoidable situations. And to be able to avoid catastrophe is a skill, but it's so easily done. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Just a little bit, you know? And I think the frustration of the protesters in Minneapolis, obviously, I think I can speak for Cookies. Like, we understand the anger towards this. And we're not getting better at this, man. We're getting worse at this.
Well, that to me is the real question, right? That now we have on video these kind of incidents, right? Yeah. Eric Garner, George Floyd. We have the video of the jogger in Georgia, Ahmaud Arbery. With Walter Scott, we watched him get shot in the back as he ran away in South Carolina. We have these incidents on camera. And we also know that these kind of things have been happening for centuries in America, and were just excused as part of American business. People would protest and say, but this happened, cops would say otherwise. Mm-hmm. But, like, we have it on tape. We know what's happened in these situations.
Technology has changed the rules of this game.
And that is a great thing for the accountability of law enforcement. But to your point, why hasn't law enforcement become more accountable? And I think the real reason is because there are rarely legal ramifications for this kind of behavior. There may be outcry, but cops, I mean, going back to Rodney King, cops can say, I felt threatened. I was doing my job.
For sure. And
we've said, oh, you were? Okay. You were scared. Oh, great. You can kill. Yeah, you were scared. You thought he had a gun. You were allowed to shoot him 41 times. Oh, it's a mistake. Shit happens.
And legally, we even see this in movies. Legally, like, the law kind of protects police officers to take this kind of action if they feel threatened, like you said. And, the story is in movies, and the way this is retold in outside of journalism is like, there's a thin blue line here always. Mm-hmm. And I think these certain people in society are asked to make these very nuanced, quick judgment calls, and the type of person who wants to become law enforcement, in my opinion, maybe not be the best equipped to do this. I don't know who would be, but it is not the culture and tradition, and I think this is going to take generations to kind of change, and I don't know, man.
Well,
maybe it is changing.
To your point, this is cultural within American law enforcement. It's probably cultural among law enforcement globally. It's the kind of people who become cops. And there's also this sort of wink about cops misbehaving. Think of how many movies we watch that are set in Hollywood, surely made by people who donate to the Democratic National Committee, people who vote progressively. How many scenes have you watched with a police officer who has to bend the rules and beat the shit out of a suspect as his partner turns his back? to find out where someone is.
It is the
The
only
bad
story.
cop. We love the bad cop, the misbehaving cop who plays by his own rules and like fucks somebody up. We love it.
Yeah, if you see a movie with law enforcement, the only story here is the mishandling of justice, right? Like that's the only like thing that we're interested in. And let me ask you, I think historically, globally, outside of America, and that's outside of the present day, do you think this idea of law enforcement is just flawed? I've been pushing this peer pressure thing since the coronavirus started. I trust peer pressure more than I trust enforcement.
Well, I don't think anyone should trust law enforcement.
Historically, like even
That's
medieval
yeah,
Game
at
of
any
Thrones
point.
shit, you know?
Yeah, do I think the Centurions were cool as shit? No. Cops are never cool in any society.
Are stormtroopers dope? I don't. They look cool. They're a bunch of cops, man.
But like sheriffs, for example, in Western towns, they might have been cooler because they were someone who lived in the town.
Not all sheriffs, right? Point.
But, they might have been okay.
Yeah.
Do I think that they treated people awfully who, say, weren't from that town or people who are different? Of course. But maybe as a member of the community, in like the Opie Mayberry sense, granted, those are the same ones following cars in Mississippi burning. But that idea of the local member of the community who watches over people and knows people, I think that is attractive if we're going to have law enforcement. But look at Minnesota. Those cops don't live in the city. One of the lowest percentages in the country of cops who live in the city that they are ostensibly there to protect. So they don't answer to that community. They don't answer to their peers in that community. They don't answer to the people in that community. They don't answer to them at all.
Yeah.
They don't interact with them. They don't have to go to the store and see someone who they just fucking elbowed in the head.
Yeah. The solution I love for a minimal solution for this that I love is pay cops a lot more money. Like make these jobs lucrative, and then you're going to get a different kind of source of
I'm going to go
people.
with defund all law enforcement as a different tack.
But then like you get Curtis Lewa, right? And like that's I mean, who is in charge of the Guardian Angels here in New York City, and that didn't work great. He does a radio show now that people kind of like, I guess.
He's got a pod. Curtis
Success.
Levo with the perfect pod.
Yeah.
Guardian Angels.
I mean, and then, like sometimes like there's a couple of drug dealers a few blocks away from me that have been there as long as I've lived in my apartment. And there's gunfire sometimes, and there's two groups of them, and they kind of fight each other. But I kind of know that's where it is a little bit safe, because they don't want to draw attention to themselves, So I walk by them to go to the bodega that they stand in front of, and I don't feel threatened. And it's an interesting thing, because, like, what kind of law enforcement are we talking about?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, cops are allowed to commit crimes, right? That's really what their job is. They are allowed to commit crimes ostensibly for the public good. And that is a powerful trust.
Yeah.
Like, you can break and enter. You can home invade. You can brandish a firearm. You can discharge a firearm. You can assault. You can murder. You can kidnap. You can abduct. As long as it's for a good cause.
Yeah.
As long as it's for, like, us, the royal we, you can commit crimes. My thing is, like, if they commit crimes for the wrong reason, then they should be tried like criminals who commit crimes for the wrong reason. Saying, I thought the guy had a gun and he didn't, to me is not good enough. If I have a gun, which I don't, but if I had a gun and shot someone because I thought they had a gun, I would go to jail.
Yeah.
Or I should go to jail.
Yeah.
And to me, if you're a cop and you think someone has a gun and you shoot him and you're wrong, sorry, dude, jail. Jail. If you don't like those rules, don't shoot somebody. Don't become a cop. If you can't handle that rule that you have to see a gun and someone has to shoot at you first, if you can't handle that rule, don't be a cop.
Yeah, and I think that, I agree with most of that. And I think some countries have don't have as many guns, you know, and cops don't carry weapons like that. And to me, that's worth investigating. And when we talk about loss of life, I think that gets very fucking serious. But when we talk about cops being able to break laws, like let's say you call 911 and a cop comes in to see if you're okay into your house. You're like, I'm okay, but you're trespassing. And it's like, no, you called me. It's like, but I didn't say you can come in. It's like, oh, here we go. And like, I think especially Americans will look for every angle and uncover or unearth every opportunity.
I'm just going to insist that the idea that a cop can kill someone because they're scared is not good enough. Like, stop being a little baby then. Don't be a cop. Do not be a cop. If you are so scared of people that you have to shoot them, don't be a cop. Don't handle that responsibility. Don't do it. Go become a security guard.
Yeah.
You don't get a gun.
Yeah.
You don't get the right to murder people if you are so scared of them. If they're running away from you and you're mad and you shoot them, no, you go to jail forever.
I mean,
to me, it's worse than someone who just like gets mad at someone like beefing at a club and goes to the trunk. Cops are worse because we've given them the right to commit these things, like a sacred societal trust that's been violated. To me, they're worse.
yeah, I mean, I think, again, stuff is fucking complicated in every story you hear with this. Like Errol Morris's documentaries about it, it's very complex. Like in each individual story, and you know, I bristle at maybe like the sentence like the right to murder. I mean, you can say it that way, and that sounds like, yeah, absolutely, no, you should not have that right. But a lot of times it's like situations are so complicated, and like I just don't like guns that much, and I don't think we talk about mental illness enough, and these cops are not equipped to like deal with people in distress. They just see danger, and I think it's a systemic cultural issue.
I agree with you. And I'm just saying, to me, the way that you fix that is by having accountability. It's by saying, whoa, we as cops need to change the way that we behave because there are actual ramifications. That if we assault someone, we go to jail. If we shoot somebody for the wrong reason and they're unarmed, we go to jail. And if you were a cop who was there and you helped fabricate a police report, he's going to jail. And I'm not talking about 6 months and like some country club thing where they get released. No. You're going to jail for real. That like they have to behave like other people in society behave. We can't walk around just assaulting people because we'd go to jail. Yeah. Cops, same things apply to you guys. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Hold them to the same standards that we hold everyone else in society because we trust them to make the right decisions.
Yeah, and I think it's just like it's a broken mechanism, I think. And when I say I trust peer pressure more than law enforcement, it's just like one would assume peer pressure involves a process in which we come to an understanding, and law enforcement involves the rule of law. And I think those are two distinctly different things because they're given the opportunity to interpret a rule. As in peer pressure, it's always evolving, a lot of times for the worse. But I don't think the law as it is dictated is necessarily working to advocate many people.
I agree. I just don't think the cops are susceptible to peer pressure because you look how they respond. They're in Minnesota, and you look at how the media spins it. You look at how politicians spin it. You know, de Blasio had some stuff that the cops didn't like. I forget if it was budgets or whatever. So they turned their backs on him and you know, wielded a war against him through the press, like the New York Post and Daily News, which just love cops.
Yeah.
De Blasio doesn't cross them anymore. De Blasio is like super in the cops' pocket now.
Yeah,
because he doesn't want that smoke with the NYPD. He was embarrassed. It made him look weak, he thought.
Yeah.
He'd rather have them as an ally.
Yeah. And they're like, you know, the joke that cops are gangs is funny, and like, yeah, sure. I'm not debating that at all. I mean, they're unions and they're Teamsters, right? And they're like, if me and you wanted to be a cop, it would be kind of difficult to succeed at that job because we're not part of that lineage. I don't know anyone who's a cop. My family's not from that environment, and we would have a tough time like anything, like a lawyer, a politician. And you would think that law enforcement didn't operate that way, but it does. And, sometimes crimes happen, and they must protect themselves too. And it just becomes like this weird, untouchable gang mentality. And
I mean, the stuff that the Police Benevolent Association says is just straight lunacy. It's lunacy.
yeah,
They're not normal. It's not just a normal group of people protecting, like, the reputation of their members. It's bonkers shit.
yeah. I mean, I remember the Dinkins era of New York. Cops were terrifying. I mean, I always say this story when I was a little kid.
Rudy Giuliani led a police riot by, like, City Hall. Cops rioted in the streets, and, like, Rudy was a ringleader.
Yeah. My mom, I remember I was so into like chips and like that show Chips, and also potato chips and shrimp chips and also pita chips. Fucking fantastic. Bagel chips.
Okay. Back on track here.
And I remember as a little kid being into entertainment and TV shows and being excited when I saw a cop. And my mom would always say, if I ever lose you in New York City, do not ask a cop for help. Just go straight into a deli. I think I've told you this story before. Mm-hmm. And she was like, that's the safest place to be because I don't quite trust these guys. So don't interact with police officers. But you can watch, like Eric Estrada on a motorcycle enforcing the law. That's entertainment. Real life shit, do not talk to cops.
During the quarantine era, I was digging through shows to watch. And I've always heard good stuff about The Shield, which is about the LAPD, and started watching the pilot episode. Again, this is like a universally acclaimed show.
I've not peeped it. Should I watch it?
Well, I started watching it and made it about 10 minutes in, and it was just the roguish bad cop beating the shit out of people. And I'm like, oh, this is our anti-hero? Get the fuck out of here. At one point, I might have liked that. Might have thought that was endearing or charming or entertaining. I'm not here for that anymore.
Yeah. No.
The idea that we can sort of wink, there he is, doing whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Punching a suspect in the face, jamming his face onto a stovetop, whatever he was doing. Like that's kind of funny. Yeah. That shows him being a rebel or getting things done, even if he has to go outside of the boundaries of what
outside of the box.
Those suits from Infernal Affairs, internal affairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the romanticizing of brutal cops needs to stop.
Yeah, like we stopped caring about G.I. Joe because it aged out. I think we should do that with cops. I remember when I was a really young human and person, and someone first told me about the idea of good cop, bad cop, and I was like, what do you mean there's bad cops? I was very young, but like there shouldn't be that story, right? It should just be good cop, but things don't work out that way. It's like good politician, bad politician. How come we don't say that?
Yeah, but the key to the good cop, bad cop is that the good cop is actually also a bad cop.
Because they're just cops.
That's what I'm saying. It's okay, I'm going to pretend to be a good cop, and he's going to pretend to be the bad cop, but really, we're both cops.
I know. And, like, there's cop behavior everywhere, and I think there has been, like, copception with certain editorializing of the way we talk about the coronavirus, but this is fucking different, man. We're not talking about, like, scolding. That's kind of more closer to peer pressure than actually enforcing a law, which kind of always needs to be updated and is never updated enough and understood well enough by the people with a gun or with a knee that they could put on someone's neck. Who knew Steven Jackson? Yo, how crazy is that? Steven Jackson's homie.
That was really nuts. Apparently they grew up together, I guess, or he's known him for a long time, and I guess he had given him some suits so that he could, he was a bouncer, so that he could sort of get his life together, and it's a really tragic. I mean, his death is obviously tragic no matter what. But
meaningless.
A really, Steven Jackson's someone that we hear from all the time. So it was a really like a coincidence in many ways, but also shows, let's be honest, how closely related, athletes in the NBA are to the same people who are getting choked out and killed by cops. Like this is one community. That's when you see LeBron James wearing an "I Can't Breathe" shirt, and that's why it means something, and that's why Colin Kaepernick took a knee, because this is that same community.
Yeah, and I think this is important, especially with like the New York Times cover on Saturday. Steven Jackson is someone me and you think about and like quite a bit. Personally, I really like him.
Captain Jack.
Yeah, he's awesome. And it's instead of a Black Lives Matters thing, which is 1000% true, it's like it gives him a personality and it gives him a name. And we know a little bit about his story, and it's like 5 times as heartbreaking. And I wonder if we wouldn't talk about the statistics, like, oh, less than 100 people died in New York yesterday. I'm like, those were all like 4 degrees of separation from you. Like I say this constantly, like they liked Michael Jordan. They had their favorite sodas, they had their go-to comfort meals. Like it's too much, man. And then I sleep for 13 hours.
The anonymity of COVID has been one of the saddest parts of it.
Yeah.
And, there are people who've died, and their names were on the cover of the New York Times, and we hear, the sad stories and obituaries. But generally, that's been one of the biggest tragedies of this, that we'll have 100,000 Americans die, most of them in solitude, by themselves, on a ventilator. And it happened out of eye shot. And that's why George Floyd, we can see it. It's there. We're watching a man's life be squeezed out of him by a police officer's knee.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is important that we say the name of people like George Floyd, and they're not a man.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a police involved event. No, he was killed and murdered by cops.
And this is like a frustrating part of all this, because they say, the AIDS crisis kind of took too long, but it took a turn when Ronald Reagan's friend, Rock Hudson, died of AIDS. And so he started taking it seriously. To me, I had that little reaction yesterday where it's like, another black man died in Minneapolis. I'm like, oh, his name is George Floyd. I'm like, oh, interesting. He was friends with Steven Jackson. I'm like, holy shit, this is giving color. He was a bouncer. I'm like, I know many bouncers. Like, this is getting, like, even worse, And I think this is really important. And, Donald Trump has not been taking coronavirus seriously because it has not touched him like this. And he has no feelings like this. But even attaching this man's name to someone we think about outside of the ugliness of what happened, like Steven Jackson, I'm like, the intensity is really hard to accept.
I think Black Lives Matter has done a good job recognizing the importance of names, the importance of contextualizing these victims not as anonymous, but as people like Sandra Bland or Eric Garner, etc. And that's really vital, because a lot of people who are killed by cops are never registered as having been killed by cops. Swept under the rug, never mentioned. It doesn't happen on paper. And and this happens. And there's no database federal of how many people were killed by cops. It doesn't exist. And that's intentional.
Yeah, for sure.
Most studies, or some studies, say that it's around 1,500 people, and that if you were killed by a stranger, 30% of those will have been killed by cops. It's not insignificant. Serial killers, mass murderers, terrorists. 30% of people who were killed by strangers were killed by cops.
They're terrifying. Terrifying.
Stormtroopers, terrifying.
Stay away from them.
And it's terrifying specifically for certain people in America. And that comes down to, if you were white and you were walking around, you have no fear of cops. None.
Yeah.
None. Walk around with a beer, walk around with a cocktail. I mean, we're basically being dared to drink in public by, the restaurant laws in New York right now.
Yeah.
White people can walk around with no fear of cops, no fear of being arrested, no fear of being stopped, no fear of an encounter going wrong. Nothing. It's a completely different level of enforcement from other communities.
Yeah, it's a different life experience. It's a different life lived in America, right?
Right, and when white people are like, cops, I like cops, it's because you have a completely different experience from that of black people or other people of color.
I remember when I was little, back to the chips thing, we got a cop sticker for a car in the mail, and it was like cool. The New York City Police Department logo is a shield, and I was a little kid. I was like, can we put this on our Nova? And my mom was just like, hell's no. We do not want to draw attention to anything of that sort. And, like Asian people have a different experience always. And I'm not claiming it's the same as like American natives or Indian people or black people. But it does not feel great, man. At a young age, you identify as like, this is not working well.
I mean, the only time I've spent outside of working, I worked in county jails when I was younger.
What do you mean?
I was just working for the public defender when I was younger. But when I've been on the other side of those bars,
not the Dame Lillard bars.
Just bars. Was when I got pulled over riding my bike through Bed-Stuy. This is probably 15 years ago. It was a really long time ago. And I was one of the only white people in that neighborhood. At that time, it was not gentrified at all. And they thought I was there to buy drugs. I was running errands.
Right. Yeah.
And I had an open container violation for a ticket that I gotten like 2 years before and never received anything in the mail. So I got taken in. I got, frisked. They ran my license for a warrant. I had one, so I got taken to the precinct in Bed-Stuy and then taken to Brooklyn Central Booking. Probably I was only stopped because I was white in a black neighborhood because they thought that I was there to buy drugs. Because they were like, when patting me down, they're like, where are the needles? I'm like, I don't have needles, man. In the jail cell, without getting into a whole story about Brooklyn Central Booking, there were so many guys in there, young kids, who were in there because they lived in public housing projects, would walk out of the building and cops would stop them and frisk them and find a bag of weed and bring them in. So many of them were in there. Mm-hmm. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't commit something. They were stopped and frisked. And you saw it in real life. That policy doesn't apply to white people. White people never get stopped by the cops and frisked. Only happened to me because I was in a black neighborhood.
Right.
But you could see it in real time, is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Not just as a policy that Bloomberg and Giuliani embraced. In real time with people who are now in jail and in cells as teenagers for doing nothing other than like walking outside of their house, doing the same things that every teenager across America does.
It's like a poor interpretation and a poor understanding of context. And right, it's like they are deducting, and this is what we're doing now with the COVID, they're deducing thoughts and results based off of their judgment. And if we go by that, like, we're kind of in trouble, because I do feel like because of the leap of technology, we're kind of like scrambling to find another common way to do this, whether that be law enforcement, healthcare, protecting ourselves from a virus like this one. Like, stuff is kind of jumbled up now. And to ask these people who are attracted to being law enforcement, like Donovan Mitchell, to deduce on the fly is asking too much.
I would say that since the very beginning of America, from day one, law enforcement has had a role that has been pretty specific in terms of who they are policing and why they're policing those groups. Yeah. And that has not changed. Yeah. And I think what we're talking about here is technology changing, neighborhoods changing, the awareness of these kind of events being magnified. But this is how it's always worked. The cops have always acted this certain way in certain communities and acted a different way in different communities. Yeah. And now we're seeing video, extensive video, that makes people say, wait a minute. So when all those white guys with bushy beards and, Celtics tattoos and AK-47s marched onto the Capitol and were coughing in the faces of police officers, nothing happened.
Yeah.
But when protesters peacefully marched, they got tear gassed.
Yeah.
They got shot in the head with rubber bullets.
Yeah.
That's not equivalent.
I think about, you brought up gentrification and I think about the law quite a bit. And one thing that happened like early in the aughts, I think we were all moving to like these loft spaces that were illegal. They weren't up to code. It was kind of sketchy. There was like holes in the floor that people would like fall in and die of, like from falling at parties. And I remember one of my friends lived in Williamsburg in a huge loft, and her entire building got raided and everyone got kicked out. But as soon as everyone figured out it was a bunch of graphic designers with peoples whose parents were like donators to politicians' campaigns and stuff, they let everyone go back. And not only did they let everyone go back, they changed a policy where they weren't going to enforce it as heavily. And I thought that was really odd how they could just switch that. It's like, oh, the NBA has to play these number of games. We don't have to. It's like we have to have a draft lottery. We don't have to. And all these things that human beings can change that we feel are too difficult. The relationship between law enforcement and our civilians is something that's cultural and goes back generations, and it's hard to change. Or we could just fucking change it, right?
Right. Well, look, we'd love to pay for your college education. We'd love to give you relief for your loans, but we just can't. We can't do it. Oh yeah, we totally could have done that. Honestly, it would have taken about 30 seconds. Yeah, that was easy.
You need to be in jail for carrying this amount of drugs. No, you don't. You can go.
Oh yeah, marijuana, you can actually sell that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally cool. Yeah, it's legal now. Oh, sorry about those years when you were in prison for it. My bad.
Yeah. We're smoking it now, too.
Except for sorry, not sorry.
I've tried it. It's cool. We're the same, right? You're free now. It's like...
Right? But yeah, I think that's what's both discouraging and also gives rise to a little bit of optimism. When you have all these entrenched problems, you're like, yeah, but we can probably fix them.
Are you saying trust the precinct?
No. I'm not saying that.
Never me. But right, like the Knicks could get better in 3 years, but we just have to do things. We can change these things that aren't like the Earth being round or like the sun coming up or the rotation of the Earth on its axis. We can change the way we do things like law enforcement and create policy and punish people. These are all human created ideas, and we can do whatever we want with them.
Yeah, because like we've never been able to really solve drunk driving in America, right? Like that's still a problem. It still happens. People die. People crash. It's a real issue. The day that there are cars with like autopilot, self-driving vehicles,
soon.
But cool. There's no more drunk driving. It's over. Yeah. We tried to figure out a way when people are riding around on stagecoaches, whiskeyed up. Couldn't figure out a way to solve it. Know when to say when, designated driver, breathalyzer, couldn't figure it out.
But in that vacuum, it's going to be tough, right? Because let's say a car, there's error with automated drivers. Let's say someone is in a car driving itself and it accidentally hits somebody. And does the company who made that car or software, do they get punished for it? Like, how do you do this?
Well, that's a different conversation. I'm more getting around to not the nuts and bolts of it, but the idea that sometimes we can solve problems that have been seemingly intractable and societal and baked into who we are as a country or as a people, etc., and then they're just gone.
Yeah.
If we have self-driving cars, cops can't stop black motorists. They
Yeah.
can't do it. They can't do it.
I mean, yeah.
They can't, can't do it. Not allowed to do it. You can't. These cars are driving under the speed limit. You can't pull them over. You can't drunk drive. These are no longer crimes.
Yeah. And, like, this is not the big cookie secret, but this is, like, in order to talk about these bigger problems, like, they kind of happen within an organization and within the NBA. And you're talking about an idea that we talk about endlessly with the Sixers and the Knicks and teams who rebuild or change culture. Does culture exist? Is it the value of the player versus the value of the mentality? And these are all societal questions, right? And what you're talking about, let's say technology threw a wrench into the entire universe, the world. That's LeBron James, right? He changes the metric of everything. So we're just changing rules to accommodate for a seismic shift in our experience. And I think we talk about these things like you're talking about with law enforcement and automation. And this has everything to do with like how Orlando Magic rebuild, right?
Well, this kind of makes me think of the Bucks. Because the Bucks, to me, have perfected a technological innovation, and they've optimized it. And I'm talking about Giannis. Giannis is a glitch.
He's a leap forward.
You're not supposed to be able to have a guy with his mobility, his arm length, and his strength that can get the ball around the paint and score pretty much every single time. And the Bucks have wisely opted to build an entire system based on more or less that attribute. Giannis is very difficult to stop without fouling when he's near the basket.
Apex slammer jammer over here.
He'll dunk on your head. He'll maneuver around you. He can come up with a layup. And if you try to physically body him up, he's stronger than you, so you'll end up fouling him. He draws as many fouls as anyone in the league. He scores more points in the paint than anyone in the league. And the Bucks have figured this out. They have an offense based on his scoring ability in the paint. And then when help comes, he kicks it out, and then they spin it around the perimeter and shoot threes, much like Orlando did with Dwight Howard.
He's an Amazon, man.
Yeah, same thing. And defensively, they've used his abilities around the rim as a shot blocker and as a post defender and a rebounder, and build a defense based off of that as well. But I don't find it very appealing.
Go off, King.
I find it cynical math basketball. It's all expected value. And they're right. And they're doing this correctly. And I respect it from a philosophical standpoint. The product, to me, is not very enjoyable. Giannis is not a graceful artist. He is a battle axe. He's not nunchucks or a butterfly knife.
He's a blunt object. He's like you pound your little chicken breast into a chicken cutlet with like the bottom of a coffee can, right?
Yeah, I mean, you give him the ball, he gets around his man or he shoves his man and he ends up at the basket. He flies into people, he commits a lot of charges, he draws a shit ton of fouls. It's just not a great product. And this is not a knock on his greatness. I'm not someone who says, well, Giannis can only dunk, so he's not great. He is fantastic. I think he's the second best player in the NBA after LeBron. But if you build an entire structure, offensively and defensively, around the value of a blunt object, it doesn't end up being that Baroque. It doesn't end up with a lot of grace notes and flourishes and serifs.
And shout out to Patrick Ewing, who's feeling better these days, but it reminds me of the way we talk about Starks versus Ewing. And I very much love, because Ewing was the man, but Starks gets the love because of perhaps dribble bias. And I really enjoy the Bucks, and I really like Chris Middleton when we've debated this. But my question to you is, I get you. They are a mathematically structured team who lets other teams shoot 3-pointers, who defends the rim, they use Brook Lopez as in two distinct ways and don't ask him to do anything aside from shoot threes and defend the rim. 3-and-D from a player who could be an all-star now on the Knicks if he's allowed to shoot, if he's allowed to dunk. My question to you is, like, there's no presence with apologies to Eric Bledsoe. There's no presence of a basketball genius on the Bucks, right?
Giannis is a physical basketball genius for sure. And he might be a smart player. He's not a particularly skilled player in that way. You know, as a passer, he's a capable passer who can see the floor and deliver the ball to an open teammate. But it's all predicated by his ability to draw double teams in the post. And you watch him pass. You tell me if it's exciting or interesting. Because he passes like a big guy.
Right, he dishes out.
He is unselfish. He is willing. He makes the right reads.
Yeah.
But he passes like a 7-footer.
Right.
He kind of dribbles like a 7-footer.
Yeah.
He just happens to be really mobile. And, again, second best player in the league.
He's incredible. Yeah.
He's incredible. He is a totally effective passer. He creates a lot of threes. Gets the job done. But you watch him pass. It's not graceful. He passes like a 7-footer.
Yeah.
His passes are errant. Many of them off target. They're too high. The guy's got to move several feet to get them. He's not Jokic. He's not LeBron. He's not Simmons. He's not Draymond. He's not that kind of passer. Effective, yes. Yeah. And I'm not knocking his passing. But it's to your point. He is a physical basketball genius in terms of how impossible it is to stop him from doing the thing that he wants to do.
And he wants to do the right thing, which makes him the second best player. Yeah, but you're right. He doesn't aspire to this Baroque, entertaining kind of presence. And, you know, like, the Knicks are not in the NBA, but when Giannis's free agency comes up and he's going to be the most talked about person in the league, I kind of don't want him to come to the Knicks for multiple reasons. But one of the reasons is he's not aesthetically my cup of tea, and I don't think the Knicks know how to use him like the Bucks know how to use him.
Can he coexist with Bobby Portis? And I don't know. Can him and Randall work together to create a formidable front line in Gotham?
Is he going to be intimidated by Frank Smokes? Like, it's tough to have two alphas in the room.
Will he take post possessions away from R.J. Barrett?
Yeah, who's better than Jason Tatum? Like, these are all questions that BMM would want to know. But you're right. Like, I love to watch the Bucks, but I mostly just follow Brook Lopez around the court because I think it's so funny what he does, and he's such a lumbering optic that it's no secret about what they're doing because you could see Brook Lopez kind of doing it in a nutshell. But I really love them, and if the season resumes in a certain form, I'm putting my money on the Bucks, man.
This is why I bring them up mostly, because if the season does resume, as the NBA seems to intend, we got to start talking about the Bucks because they were on pace to win almost 70 games. They have likely the back-to-back MVP. They have the number one defense. They have a top 5-ish, top 7 offense, even with, you know, Giannis and some of their studs sitting out a few games.
Dante's Inferno.
Got him. Mm-hmm. But this is a formidable team. But when you compare them to the personality of squads like OKC or Lob City or the Cavs with LeBron, the Heat with LeBron, even the Lakers with LeBron, Golden State, just, you know, the Pistons, the Bulls with Derrick Rose. This team doesn't really have a personality.
Yeah.
They don't have an image. And I don't like it. Yeah. I'm not into it. Yeah. And when I say that they're a dorkball team, I'm being genuine. That their entire defense is based on expected value. And don't get me wrong, I respect the shit out of what the Bucks are doing from an intellectual standpoint. They've done the math. And when Coach Bud was in Atlanta, they gave up the fewest threes in the entire NBA. He's gone back to the drawing board. The Bucks gave up more threes this season proportionally than any team in the history of the NBA. For all the criticism about the Rockets playing math ball, that's what the Bucks do. They try to create a three-point shooting contest between them, and they're fourth in the league in threes, and their opponents by giving up more than any team in history, while giving you worse looks than the ones they get, and then scoring a bunch of their points with Giannis in the paint.
Right.
This is all they're doing. And I love how the Bucks say, we're going to play at a high tempo because of this math. We want more possessions per game to beat you at our math.
Yeah.
So their tempo, first in the league. We want Giannis to get more rebounds so that he can push the ball on the break. He leads the league in defensive rebounds. He gets more defensive rebound opportunities than any player in the NBA.
Yeah.
You know, we want to have the best defense. You got it, number one. We want him to score the most points in the paint. You got it. He leads the NBA. Like, much respect to the Bucks dorkball. I just don't love watching it.
I mean, it's not even their fault, right? Because like when you get Giannis Antetokounmpo, who they drafted, you build around your strengths. And losing Brogdon didn't have a giant effect like we thought it would, but he was like a very enjoyable player to watch, I think. And they acquired Eric Bledsoe. They dusted off Chris Middleton and turned him into a 2-time All-Star, I believe 2 times. They salvaged Brook Lopez from being an antiquated big man into a modern 3-and-D.
A wonderful move that I did not see. I did not see that coming. I thought Brogdon's departure would hurt them a lot. I did not think Wesley Matthews would be giving them valuable minutes. Like, hats off to the Bucks for making shrewd moves that I didn't see.
Dante's Inferno is an important part of that team. And, like, these are really dull players, right? Like, your big free agent signing is Brook Lopez. I'm like, oh, man, I just woke up as if I watched a Dame Lillard cipher. But, like, I think it's hard for me to blame this team for you're correct. They're aesthetically not that pleasing. But, like, this is the hand they were dealt. Are they going to win the Vegas jackpot with 3 kings? I don't know. No one else has a flush.
Yeah, and again, this is not a knock on how good they are. It's not a knock on how smart they are. It's none of those things. It's just an aesthetic choice, right? When we saw the Pistons and the Spurs play in the finals, 2 of the best teams defensively in history. I mean, they literally might be 1 and 2.
Yeah.
The NBA was like, yo, we got to change the rules. We can't allow this garbage anymore.
Yeah.
Unwatchable.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should have to say, just because the Bucks are great, that they're enjoyable to watch. Their defense is not enjoyable to watch. They clog the middle of the paint. They don't do a lot of trapping. They don't do a lot of pressure. They just clog the paint over and over and over until your team relents and chucks up a 3. That's what they do. And they're the best at doing that. They give up the most threes and they protect the rim ironclad. They're the best in the NBA at defending the rim with their personnel. Doesn't mean I have to love watching that shit.
And this no sin bin, this reminds me so much of the New Jersey Devils in hockey, because they won so many Stanley Cups playing this trapping style of hockey, where it was impossible to watch, where they had their best player as a defenseman, Scott Stevens, and they just kind of kept the puck around him. They didn't shoot that much, and they won games like 1-0, 0-0, 2-1. And it's like, I think what you're getting at is like excellence versus entertainment. They kept on winning, so their fans were like, we'll take it because we're winning year after year. And overall, the league might be like, we're going to lose fans because this is unwatchable. Baseball is going through the same thing. The value is in relief pitching, but no one wants to see all these no-names pitched for like 2 batters,
So my question to you is, in the battle of excellence versus entertainment, there was probably a point where we said, like the Kobeist, right? He's the winner. He's the most excellent. He's entertaining. Spurs. Have we shifted away for like reasons of efficiency? Like has our definition of excellence shifted, or are we still in sort of, the Jordan-esque boomer, like winner take all? I don't know yet.
I don't know yet.
I can't figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I think reluctantly the NBA community has accepted the Golden State Warriors for winning those championships, but there was so much pushback from that, and to me that was excellence and entertainment, but we weren't ready for both. I think we're still in the fumes of Kobe and Jordan and LeBron. People would say he's entertaining, but he's not excellent because he doesn't have those rings. And I would say he's probably more excellent than he's entertaining because I don't love to watch him play because he's not as like elegant as a Michael Jordan, right? But he's a better player.
And you hear those critiques about LeBron. Oh, he's just a linebacker.
Yeah.
You know, you see the same stuff about Giannis and about Shaq. And I do feel a bit boomery when I say I don't like watching the Bucks because they aren't stylish. They don't do things that I feel are transcendent and that they are based on Giannis's arm length and the broadness of his shoulders.
Yeah.
He shoulders someone in the chest, gets a foul call, or he dunks on their head.
Yeah.
And it sounds like I'm hating on Giannis, which I am not doing. I think Giannis is amazing. It just isn't necessarily the finest product. And it made me think of someone like Kyrie Irving. Like, man.
He's fun, man. I can
I
watch him
forgot
any
about
day.
Kyrie Irving. We don't even consider him like really an elite player. Like, yeah, but he's also probably the best ball handler in the history of basketball. He might be the best shot maker, just like shot maker.
He might be the best finishing guard of all time.
That's what I'm saying. Like, hardest shot maker, best ball handler. Like, that guy is incredible. What did he do this year? Played 20 games. But what did he do? Oh, put up, what,
Best season ever.
27, like 5 and 7 or
His
something?
per game numbers are the best ever for
Like,
him.
just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Career best in like stuff like per, BPM, win shares per 48. He is phenomenally good. And we don't really care about Kyrie. I wonder though if we shifted a little bit too far away from like guys who are cool. Like have the cops won.
I mean, always, right? And I mean, Kyrie is a tough example because he's just hurt. But I feel that way about Draymond Green, who was not hurt. And to me, he is everything you said about Kyrie, but kind of like defensively and kind of he's not the best defender of all time, but he was a new kind of defender that I think certain people, we talked about it when the Warriors were healthy. He is like a defensive genius, and he's been getting a lot of grief on the internet because of BMM associate Kendrick Perkins' distaste for him and all these these polls. And sometimes I don't know what boomers always want, but I know they don't want a trash-talking player who doesn't score a lot.
Yeah, they're not into that.
No.
Unless it's Bill Russell.
But even Bill Russell is not even mentioned at all during the whole month we went through with The Last Dance, right? I was expecting the BMM to fire some shots, but there was no Bill Russell shot to be heard, man. We didn't get that.
No. But this kind of brings me back to LeBron because we've talked about this before. He made Dirk beloved, and he also made Tim Duncan beloved.
He's a kingmaker.
He really and I like those guys. They're fantastic. They're two of the best players of all time.
Do you like Dirk?
Not really. No, he's great. He's great. I was always a Dirk
Of course.
defender. I was a Dirk defender. When everyone said he was a soft choker, I defended him.
Okay.
I like Dirk.
Done.
I'm like, everyone's like, get his ass in the paint. I'm like, no, get further away from the paint. Play like Brook Lopez used.
Yeah.
But, no, I always loved Dirk. He's unique, a 7-footer who could rain threes, and everyone got mad at him for doing it. But he beats LeBron, and all of a sudden, we like him. Mm-hmm. Tim Duncan, notoriously, infamously boring. No one liked the Spurs. No one liked Tim Duncan.
The big fundamental.
No one liked him. He beats LeBron. All of a sudden, gotta love him. Gotta love him. Look, I'm being redundant. I've said this shit several times because it's so right. But when you start saying Tim Duncan is exciting and we should like Tim Duncan, you've lost the thread. He's not those things. He's not entertaining. He's not exciting. He's not interesting. He's great. But do we have to sit here now and pretend that we like Tim Duncan's game? He's phenomenal. I got no problem with someone saying he's a top 8 player of all time.
Yeah.
Great. Tim Duncan was not anyone you tuned in to watch.
And I think people have a tough time with those Spurs team because people still don't like to talk about Tim Duncan. Patrick Ewing was the best player the Knicks have ever had, but we talk more about John Starks and Anthony Mason and Charles Oakley because they offered a side of their personalities that Patrick didn't. Patrick Ewing was a wrecking ball who kept to himself. That doesn't spell for creating an imaginative story, right? Charles Oakley was an enforcer. Anthony Mason was a ball dribbling power forward with like a nightlife, a taste for the nightlife. John Starks was packing groceries. Like, these are all stories we love. What was Patrick Ewing? Like, oh, an immigrant who just dominated in college and keeps to himself and just reins in stats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what we're doing with the NBA is looking for stories, right? And I think Cookie's version of entertainment is different than other person's version of entertainment. I think we can all agree. This is a hot take. What I believe is everyone doesn't care about excellence because the way we talk about excellence is way too vague. The way people think LeBron James is not as good as Michael Jordan because of rings, but Bill Russell, yada, yada, yada. I don't think we've had a way to talk about excellence in a concise way, but the way we talk about entertainment is so distinctly subjective where we can like kind of start throwing, like spitting bars about how we love players. It becomes a more valid discussion.
Because when I was criticizing the Bucks as being dreary and bleak, people were like, I disagree. They play great team ball. It's like the Spurs if they had Shaq. And I thought about that. And I was like, yeah, it probably is. But why would that be something that we would have liked? You know, the Spurs became watchable and enjoyable once they went away from Tim Duncan. And they got more towards ball movement and play calling and incredible sets and Manu and Tony and Kawhi. That's when the Spurs team that actually was enjoyable, the one that went to the finals and battled and won and lost against LeBron and the Heat, that Spurs team was Jackson. Cool. Yeah, that Spurs team was sick because they actually changed the way they played. And there's also this idea that, well, they don't just do ISO ball like the Rockets. Sorry, guys. James Harden with the ball is one of the most exciting things in the NBA.
Yeah,
Russell Westbrook with the ball is incredibly exciting. They are basketball geniuses. They are unguardable one-on-one and fantastic passers. Assists per game by team or time of possession by a player are not indicative of entertainment.
Yeah.
Like, the Bucks are not entertaining because they're 11th in the team in the league in assists. That's not like a metric of enjoyableness.
Do you want this season to come back? Do we want to see this?
I definitely want the season to come back because I want to watch the Celtics and the Sixers, and I'll be content with that. I don't even care who wins. I just want the enjoyment of watching that. Of course, I want the Sixers to win, but I mean, I just want to see that series.
And they will.
That series will be great.
Yeah.
I want the NBA to come back when it's safe. Mm-hmm. I don't like the idea of bringing them back out of boredom and pressure and financial reasons. I don't like that at all. They are the ultimate non-essential workers.
Dude, Karl Anthony Towns' mom died. Patrick Ewing was just in the hospital. Numerous players were infected. The upside is like we get amazing entertainment. We get an emotional sense of coming back to our lives. We get a champion. We get all those things. The downside is death. We should not do this, man.
I mean, you know, I know things are getting better around the nation in some places.
Just because we know how this virus behaves more. But it's still as deadly as it was day one.
You know, one doctor said that 20% of the people who get this will have potentially lifelong damage.
What?
Could be kidney, could be lungs, could be heart.
Right.
Like that, you know, we don't know the ramifications of this illness.
Yep.
And again, if you can make sure everybody is safe, okay. But just to make it happen because people want to see it, or there's contracts that need to be satisfied, or the players are bored, It's not good enough.
Yeah.
It's got to be safe. And with that in mind, I'm with Dame Lillard. The idea of...
Oh,
Sorry.
I feel so rested. Did I just sleep 13 hours? Is the coronavirus over?
Like, what the hell were we talking about? But look, I sympathize with Dame Lillard. Because why the fuck should these guys play any games if they're not going to be in the postseason, or they're not a path to the postseason?
Well, the boomer take would be it's their jobs, and when their boss calls them back to work, it's time to work, baby, right?
Yeah, I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah, get out of here. Get out of here. If someone can die, no.
Look, if players say, I'm willing to go out there and put myself and potentially my family in more risk than they are right now, it's because, I do value the playoffs and winning an NBA championship. I'm like, wow, that's impressive. But you can't tell these guys to come back from regular season games. You can't say to the 29 teams in the NBA, get out there, suit up during an ongoing pandemic so you can go 2-3 and finish with 30 wins.
But I
Who
feel
cares?
the same. I feel the same way about the Orlando Magic. Like, do we really need all of them to get together so they can just get swept? Like, what are we doing? Maybe just the conference finals? I'm like, that's just like, the coronavirus was a formidable event. It's okay if we don't have this season to end.
Look, I think they should come back with the playoffs and end the season whenever. Like whenever you come back with the playoffs. Because the upside of that is you only have 16 teams. So you can come back and you don't have to deal with 30 teams and their coaches and their media and their staff and whoever.
Yeah.
You can cut it to 16, and in a week and a half it'll be 8. Regular season games do not make any sense to me. The NHL just said, nah, we're not doing regular season games. It is, to me, a preposterous idea to force teams to play more regular season games when they already have over 60 under their belt. This is longer than some of the strike shortened seasons or the lockout shortened seasons. Who cares? End it.
But that's how I feel about the first round. I'm like, oh, there's rarely any upsets. Shout out to Mutombo and the Nuggets. But and the Knicks in 99. But the first round doesn't matter. And I'm like, does the second round matter? Okay. Conference finals, yes. And finals matters at all. I'm like, we should just I'm not opposed to maybe when we have a vaccine or something safer or more information. Yeah, okay. Play these playoffs later and then take a 4-week break and then come back with the regular season. That's fine. I mean, this is a chance for us to be safe. We have the opportunity to be safe. We don't need to have this self-inflicted wound of okay, a coach on the Spurs got the virus and now their family has it. Now they're on a ventilator. I'm like, this can't happen. This is just irresponsible, I think. We just need a vaccine, right?
Look, if they feel like they have a foolproof method of keeping people in their bubble, of testing everyone and making sure that no one will get this and it will not get passed around to all the other athletes and the coaches and their families and etc. Okay. All right, you got this sorted.
Yeah.
But even in that situation, you can't say we're playing regular season games. You can't do it. I don't think they will. I think it is absurd to say we're going to bring 30 teams down here. It's absurd.
No, I think that's moot too. I think bringing 15 teams down there is absurd. But right now, in May of 2020, the UFC had a big pay-per-view card, and one of the top fights was canceled because the fighter and 2 people in his corner got the virus. And to your earlier point a few minutes ago, it's I don't know how we did. We were being totally safe. I'm sure you said you were in this bubble, but it's okay if you got really bored and went outside and saw somebody and then contracted it,
I think it's tough. I think it's really, really tough because it could also be, I don't know, someone who's in this bubble bringing something in, and they're in a space, and then someone goes into that space. It's very tough.
They said you couldn't contract it from surfaces, but we have one contraction. It's like they said that wasn't possible. It's like, but we have it.
Granted, there are other options, right? They're like, we'll have a play-in for the last 2 seeds in each conference. Maybe we'll seed them 1 through 16. I think they should do weird stuff. I think no crowd noise.
Yeah.
Screw the crowd noise. I just want to hear voices. I want to hear players talking shit to each other. I want to hear the coaches yelling. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
You want to do a play-in tournament? Like, do something weird. Like, all right, you can send 6 players.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. 6 guys.
Yeah, I mean, even if it wasn't as extreme as like we're going 3-on-3, so you don't have to bring your entire rosters. The last guy on your bench is not going to play. You can practice with like 10 guys, or 7 guys. We're doing 3-on-3 for this season. I'm like, cool. That sounds fun. Like I was suggesting maybe they ask like 2,000 of their invite 2,000 fans and they all log in on Zoom and they all cheer on the Jumbotron and they pump that sound in to the game. And that could be fun, and they keep on rotating those people. That could be cool. Some fan engagement. Like, if they wanted to have in-game trades, we're like, we'll trade you these 2 guys for that guy. We'll trade you R.J. Barrett for Jason Tatum. Fine, whatever. This sounds amazing. Let's go.
Who are the Celtics sweetening that deal with?
It's like they might throw in Jaylen Brown. No, they would sweeten the Jaylen Brown deal with Tatum.
I like the idea of playing these games like outside. Mm-hmm. Like, go weird. Stop, like, the idea of putting it in a stadium and pumping in crowd noise and like, why? Why are we trying to pretend it's normal? This is not normal. This is abnormal. Yeah. You want to do a weird tournament? Fine. Do a weird tournament.
Yeah.
Do odd shit. Have the number 1 seed, the Bucks, choose their opponent.
Always. I think that should be a new rule.
Just do it this time around. Maybe next year you won't. But, like, look, there was not time for teams to manipulate down the stretch of, trying to figure out who they wanted to play. That happens all the time. I don't have that much sympathy for teams that finished outside of the top 8 because it's like, hey, man,
yeah,
you know those those seedings. They've been there all year.
Right.
You weren't in playoff position.
Yeah,
you can't say you deserve to be it over someone ahead of you. But we had injuries. Hey, man, tough break. Like, It is what it is. You're not in playoff position.
I agree.
But I do think you should get creative. Let the Bucks choose their opponent. Let all 16 teams, be in one big bracket.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
There is no sanctity of the game at this point. Everything's been compromised. So, a debate I've heard is, are we gonna respect this champion? It's like, well, we might respect it more because it's been so tough for them. I'm like, that's the wrong question. How do we make this safe first, and how do we make it fun? And respect is something I don't really care about right now. It's like, are we going to honor this? If LeBron wins, are we going to count this as one of his wins? I'm like, sure. There will be some.
Obviously.
Yeah. So there's some people who will bring that up, and that's going to be a debate. But, like, what do we want? We should start from the foundation of the object instead of already interpreting the perception of it.
I mean, I think they should go, best of 5 for the first round. That was better anyway.
Sure, I like best of 7 because I like more games, but like, yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be cool just to like, okay, you gotta wake up at 7. They're gonna play 10 games today. I'm like, this is amazing. It feels like Vegas, the summer league or something, but you have actual ballers. It's like, yeah, tune into Harden and Westbrook. They're gonna split screen with Giannis, who's playing in a different game. We're just trying to get these games in, man.
I assume they would do it sort of like that. The first round would just be 4-4-4-4-4 every game or every day.
Yeah.
You play 8 teams play one day, 8 teams play the next, 8 next, 8 next, 8 next, 8 next until the first round's done.
Oh my God, that would be fun.
I mean, now I'm kind of like, bring back basketball. I'm ready to watch. What would that come out to be? About 10 hours of basketball a day? I'm in.
I mean, we did Michael Jordan for 10 hours. We can certainly do this.
Liberate the NBA. I've changed my tune.
Are you American or not, man?
I'm here for 20 hours of basketball over 2 days.
Yeah. I would absolutely watch it. Do I think it should happen? Probably not. I don't know, man. It sounds like a hot take, but death is... You cannot come back from death, man. It's not 3-0 in the playoffs. Karl Anthony Towns is not getting his mom back, so
Crazy.
let's just not do this.
Anyway, enough. Just enough, Quo. Let's get back to what people want to hear. There will be a Cookies t-shirt release later this week.
Is it going to be of one of our heroes? Is it going to be of a dog playing basketball, a buddy perhaps? Or is it going to be a player who might be better than Zion Williamson, who plays in our metropolitan area?
More words.
Okay.
Yeah, Patreons get first crack.
Yeah, you guys get first crack at it. We didn't make that many of these teas.
So yeah, get your size if you like it. And thank you for listening to Cookies Hoops.
Love you guys.
Cookies.
Cookies.